Capricorn, take a breath. Because whatever you're facing right now, this won't catch you off guard. You've been here before. You've felt the pressure. You've carried the weight in silence. And here's the truth. The universe wants you to hear today. You already passed this test. If this message finds you at the right time, type in the comments, "I received this calmly." There's a reason nothing is shaking you anymore. There's a reason you're not reacting the way you used to. And once you understand why, everything about this situation will finally make sense. Let's get into it. Capricorn, let me talk to you for a moment. Just you. Because I know this hasn't been light, not surface level stress. Not something you could brush off with a good night's sleep. This was the kind of pressure that lingered, the kind that stayed with you when the room went quiet, when the phone was face down, when you were alone with your thoughts. You've been carrying questions that didn't have clean answers, questions that followed you into your routines, into your work, into your silence. There was this feeling like you needed to get through it, not win, not dominate, just get through it. Because something inside you knew if this didn't resolve, you wouldn't feel at peace. And that kind of knowing is heavy. This wasn't worry that came and went. This was the kind that made you think deeper, made you mature faster than you planned, made you sit with yourself and ask, how much more can I hold without breaking? There were moments you didn't say out loud, moments where you stayed composed on the outside, while inside you were negotiating with your own strength. And here's what matters. You stayed. You didn't collapse into bitterness. You didn't let fear turn you reckless. You didn't hand your power away, even on the nights you were tired of being strong. That alone tells me something important about you. Because not everyone can move through uncertainty without becoming smaller, without losing their center, without needing to prove anything to anyone. You did something quieter than that. You endured. And somewhere along the way, maybe without realizing it, a shift happened. You stopped seeing this situation as a permanent sentence. You began to feel space again. Not freedom yet, but possibility. You started to sense that this wasn't the end of your road. That this moment, this person, this circumstance did not own your future. And when a Capricorn reaches that realization, something ancient wakes up inside them. Not urgency, not panic, clarity. A steady knowing that says, I still have options, I still have direction, I still have myself. That's when the weight changes shape. It doesn't disappear, but it no longer sits on your chest. It moves to your shoulders, where you know how to carry it. And notice this. The things that would have shaken you before don't hit the same anymore. News comes in, delays happen, people reveal themselves, and you pause, you breathe, you respond instead of react. That's not numbness, that's mastery. It means you've been trained by life itself, not gently, but effectively. You've learned that strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes it's quiet, sometimes it's choosing not to engage, sometimes it's continuing your day without letting disruption steal your rhythm. There is a reason you're calmer now, a reason nothing feels as dramatic as it once did. And as you sit with that realization, as you let it settle into your body, you may start to feel something else rising. Not relief yet, but recognition. Like standing on familiar ground, even though the landscape looks new. Stay with that feeling, because what's unfolding next will only make sense to the version of you who survived this without losing their soul. And somewhere in the middle of all that holding on, something subtle shifted inside you. Not loudly, not dramatically. It wasn't a moment where everything changed overnight. It was quieter than that. Almost easy to miss. You began to sense that this situation was not the walls of your life, just a room you were passing through. You might not have said it out loud, but you felt it. A small internal pause, a space opening up where fear used to sit. You started realizing this isn't the final chapter. This isn't the whole story. And most importantly, this isn't all of you. For a long time, it may have felt like one person, one job, one circumstance held too much power over your emotional weather. Like, if this went wrong, everything would collapse with it. But now you can feel that loosening. You can breathe without checking the outcome first. You can imagine tomorrow without bracing for disappointment. And that matters more than you think. Because when a Capricorn understands that no external situation gets to decide their entire destiny, something ancient awakens. Not rebellion, not escape, agency. The quiet understanding that says, I am still standing on my own ground. I still have choices. I still have time. Even if nothing outside has fully resolved yet, Your inner posture has changed. You're no longer staring at a closed door, waiting for permission to move. You're noticing the space around it, the hallway, the exits you didn't see before. And that awareness is where power actually begins. You may notice now that you don't personalize everything the way you used to. Someone's behavior doesn't define your worth. A delay doesn't mean failure. Silence doesn't automatically mean loss. You're seeing the difference between what is happening and what it means about you. And that separation is freedom. It's the moment you stop living as if your life is being graded by one test, one moment, one outcome. Instead, you're moving with the understanding that your path is wider than this, that whatever this is, it's part of your life, not the ruler of it. And there's a calm confidence growing there, not loud, not performative, just steady. The kind that doesn't need validation, the kind that doesn't rush to prove anything, the kind that knows, even if this situation takes time to settle, you are not paused as a person. You are still becoming, still choosing, still directing your energy forward. And that realization alone begins to tilt the balance. Because life responds differently when you stop approaching it from a place of feeling trapped. It listens when you move with self-respect. It opens when you stop begging for answers and start trusting your own navigation. So, as you sit with this awareness, as it settles deeper into your body, you may notice something else now. A different kind of strength forming, one that doesn't come from control, but from knowing you can handle whatever shows up next. And when that knowing locks into place, the way you meet the world begins to change without you forcing a single thing. And you may notice something else now, something that surprises you when you slow down enough to feel it. The things that once would have knocked the wind out of you no longer land the same way. Bad news arrives, and your chest doesn't tighten like it used to. There's a pause, a breath, a quiet recalibration. Delays happen, plans shift, timelines stretch, and instead of rushing into frustration, you adjust your footing. You stay upright. Pressure comes from people who once held influence over your emotions, their tone, their expectations, their opinions, and you don't flare up, you don't shut down. You don't feel the need to explain yourself into exhaustion. You simply remain. That change didn't come from indifference, it came from experience. You've learned something most people never slow down enough to learn. That stability isn't the absence of difficulty. It's the ability to stay present while difficulty moves through. You didn't harden, you didn't numb out, you grounded, like a mountain that doesn't argue with the weather. It doesn't chase the storm away. It doesn't panic when the sky darkens. It just stands, rooted, unmoved at its core. There was a time when uncertainty felt like danger, when waiting felt like punishment, when not knowing felt unbearable. But now, there's a different relationship with the unknown. You don't rush it. You don't fight it. You observe. You let information arrive when it arrives. You let truth reveal itself without forcing it. And in that space, you've discovered something quietly powerful. Your nervous system has learned trust. Not blind optimism, not denial. Trust in your own ability to handle what comes. That's why your reactions are smaller now. Cleaner, more intentional. That's why chaos doesn't hook into you the way it once did. You've already survived the part that was meant to break you, and without realizing it, you crossed a threshold, a place where life stops testing your endurance and starts testing your wisdom. You're no longer being asked, "Can you take this?" You're being asked, "How will you carry yourself through it?" And you're answering that question every day, with your calm, with your restraint, with the way you refuse to abandon yourself under pressure. That's growth people can't always see, but they feel it when they're around you. They notice you don't react the same, that you don't escalate, that you don't crumble. And some may not understand it, because they're still fighting battles you've already outgrown. There's a quiet authority that comes with this stage. Not dominance, not control, presence. The kind that doesn't need to announce itself. The kind that speaks through how you move, how you pause, how you choose peace over proving a point. And as this steadiness settles deeper into you, you may feel a strange sense of readiness. Not for conflict, not for struggle. For whatever comes next. Because now, you know something you didn't before. That no matter what shifts around you, you know how to stay standing. And that knowing changes the way the road rises to meet you. And without making a big announcement about it, you began to live again. Not in a dramatic way, not in a way that needed witnesses. Just small shifts at first, almost private. You stopped telling yourself, "I will live when this settles." I will feel joy when this resolves. I will move forward after this ends. Something inside you knew better. You realized that waiting for everything to be perfect was slowly costing you your own presence. So you began to choose life while things were still unfinished. You found sparks again, not loud excitement, but genuine interest. Moments where your mind felt engaged instead of consumed. You set goals that belonged to you, not reactions to pressure, not escapes from discomfort, intentions that felt steady, aligned, quietly motivating. You started placing your energy where it could grow instead of where it was constantly being drained, and that choice changed the way your days felt. Some Capricorns shifted direction, not because they failed, but because they finally listened. Others changed how they worked, how they paced themselves, how much they gave, and to whom. Some allowed new people in, not to replace the past, but to remind themselves that connection can feel safe again. And for some, the most important change was internal. You reclaimed authorship over your own life. You stopped measuring your worth by one outcome, one relationship, one unresolved situation. You remembered that you were bigger than any single chapter. When your emotional world stopped orbiting around one problem, something remarkable happened. That problem lost its grip. It didn't disappear immediately, but it stopped being the center of gravity. You could think about it without losing your footing. You could talk about it without reliving the pain. You could imagine a future that wasn't dependent on how this turned out. That's not avoidance. That's evolution. It's what happens when a Capricorn decides to build instead of brace. You didn't abandon responsibility. You didn't become careless. You became intentional. You chose meaning over fixation, progress over paralysis, presence over constant anticipation, and life noticed. Not because you demanded answers, but because you began moving as if your time mattered, as if your joy mattered, as if your energy was sacred. There's a quiet dignity in that. The kind that doesn't seek applause, the kind that doesn't need validation. Just forward motion, rooted in self-respect. And as you continue to live this way, you may feel something unexpected, a sense of lightness where there used to be tension. Not because everything is solved, but because you are no longer suspended. You are in motion again, on your terms. And when a Capricorn chooses to move from that place of inner authority, life begins to respond differently. Opportunities feel less forced. Decisions feel less urgent. Clarity arrives without struggle. So, as you keep walking this path, creating meaning where you are, allowing joy to coexist with uncertainty, you may notice a deeper truth emerging, one that doesn't need to be spoken aloud. That the moment you stopped giving everything to one issue, you quietly took your power back. And that power is shaping what unfolds next, even as you listen to these words. And here's where something truly meaningful settled into you. Not as a lesson, not as a rule, as a knowing. There was a time when every disruption pulled at your nervous system, when news hit your chest before it reached your mind, when a message, a delay, a sudden change could throw off the rhythm of your entire day. You remember that version of yourself, alert, tight, always bracing. It wasn't weakness, it was responsibility carried without enough rest. But something changed. Now, when something happens, you don't immediately tense. You don't spiral into scenarios. You don't let one moment dictate your mood for hours. You pause. There's a space between what happens and what you do next. And that space is where your power lives now. You've learned how to read a situation before giving it your energy, how to sense what actually deserves your attention and what will pass on its own. Not everything needs a response. Not everything needs to be fixed right now. Not everything needs to be carried. You've stopped treating every issue as an emergency, and because of that, your life has become quieter, cleaner, more intentional. You handle things directly now, without drama, without self-betrayal. You do what needs to be done, then you return to yourself. Your day continues, your breath settles, your sense of self stays intact. That's not detachment, that's discernment. You're no longer letting circumstances pull you out of alignment. And this is the part most people don't understand. The real test was never about what happened to you. It was about whether you would lose yourself while it was happening, whether you would abandon your center, whether you would let stress rewrite your character, whether you would forget who you are in the middle of uncertainty. You didn't. You stayed present. You stayed grounded. You stayed respectful to your own limits. And that matters more than any external outcome. Because a Capricorn who knows how to regulate instead of react is a force that doesn't burn out. You conserve your energy now. You choose where it goes. You don't spend it proving points or replaying conversations or carrying what isn't yours. There's a maturity in the way you move, a steadiness that didn't come from ease, but from experience. And if no one has said this to you yet, let me say it clearly. You handled this well. Not perfectly, not without moments of doubt, but with integrity, with restraint, with self-respect. That's why you feel different now. That's why the same triggers don't hook you. That's why you trust yourself more. You've learned that you can meet life as it is without losing your balance. And that realization creates a deep internal calm, one that doesn't need reassurance, one that doesn't depend on outcomes. Just a quiet confidence that says, whatever comes, I know how to move through it. So as you sit with that awareness, as it settles into your body, you may feel a gentle shift in how you look ahead. Less anticipation, less tension, more presence. Because now you understand the test wasn't about survival. It was about mastery. And you've already shown yourself that you have it. There's something else you may have sensed, even if no one ever said it out loud. Not every challenge you faced was random. Some situations didn't just happen to you. They were watching you, testing how you would move, how you would speak, how you would carry yourself when the pressure was on and the outcome wasn't guaranteed. Sometimes it came through a person, sometimes through a system, sometimes through silence. A moment where someone expected you to react, to defend, to snap, to unravel, as if they were waiting to see whether you would fall back into an old pattern. And maybe, in the past, that script would have worked. You would have explained too much, given away too much energy, lost your footing trying to be understood. But this time, something was different. You didn't rush in, you didn't meet chaos with chaos, you didn't give them the version of you they thought they could predict. You stayed calm, and calm is unsettling to anyone who expects control. You didn't argue your worth, you didn't prove your strength, you didn't take the bait. You chose clarity over confrontation, presence over performance. And in doing so, you quietly rewrote the entire dynamic. Because when someone is prepared for your reaction but instead meets your stillness, their leverage disappears. They don't know how to move forward. They don't know how to push. They don't know how to escalate. Your restraint became the disruption. You didn't overpower the situation. You outgrew it. That's the part most people never see coming. They assume strength looks loud, defensive, explosive. They don't anticipate composure. They don't expect you to step outside the script they built in their head. And Capricorn, you did exactly that. You refused to replay an old role. You refused to participate in a familiar cycle. You refused to let someone else's expectations dictate your behavior. That kind of self-control is not passive. It's deliberate. It comes from knowing who you are without needing to assert it. And the moment you held that line, the entire situation shifted. Not because they changed, but because the rules did. You were no longer responding from a place they could influence. You were anchored, and that calm did more than protect you. It revealed truth. It exposed who was seeking reaction instead of resolution, who thrived on disruption instead of understanding. And without confrontation, without explanation, you saw clearly what was no longer aligned with you. That awareness is a gift, because now you don't need to fight to maintain your ground. You simply stand on it. You don't need to convince anyone. You let your consistency speak, and life responds differently to someone who moves like that. Situations de-escalate, power dynamics dissolve, noise loses its grip, not because you demanded peace, but because you embodied it. So, if you felt a quiet sense of closure lately, even without a conversation, even without an apology, this is why. You passed the moment where reaction was expected. You chose composure where chaos was offered, and that choice did more than protect your energy. It changed what has access to you. As you continue to move forward with this level of awareness, you may notice that fewer things try to test you, not because you're untouchable, but because you're no longer available to old games. And in that space, something new begins to approach, something that doesn't require defense, something that meets you where you already stand. Stay present with that feeling, because what's aligning now is responding to the version of you that no longer needs to be provoked to know their own strength. There's something you haven't fully seen yet, not because you weren't paying attention, but because it wasn't meant to arrive loudly. Some decisions don't announce themselves when they're made. They settle quietly, behind the scenes, out of sight. And this is one of those moments. The outcome you've been waiting on, the clarity you've been sensing but not holding, has already been set in motion. Not recently, not yesterday, a while ago. Long before you stopped worrying. Long before you changed how you responded. Long before you learned to stand without needing reassurance. What you're experiencing now is not uncertainty. It's delay between truth and confirmation. And that space can feel strange, because part of you still checks the horizon, still wonders when the message will come, when the conversation will happen, when the ending will be spoken out loud. But the deeper part of you already knows. That's why your body isn't tense anymore. That's why your intuition feels steady instead of anxious. That's why you're not chasing answers the way you once did. The decision didn't need your approval to be made. It only needed your growth to catch up to it. And you did. What's approaching now is not a verdict. It's a receipt. A confirmation of something that shifted in your favor once you chose yourself. The words you'll hear, the response you'll receive, the ending that finally becomes official won't shock you. Because you've already lived through the emotional part of it. You already released what needed to be released. Already made peace with multiple possibilities. Already stepped into a version of yourself that doesn't hinge their stability on one outcome. That's why when it arrives, it will feel familiar. Like something you knew was coming, even if you couldn't explain how. And this matters, because it means you're no longer waiting from a place of fear. You're waiting from a place of readiness. There's a difference. Fear waits by gripping, readiness waits by standing, and you are standing now. Whatever this resolution brings, it doesn't define your worth. It doesn't determine your direction. It simply closes a loop that has already done its work in your life. The lesson has been integrated. The strength has been built. The attachment has softened. So the universe doesn't need to test you anymore. It just needs to inform you. That's why things may feel strangely calm, even as you sense an ending approaching. Not sadness, not relief, completion. And when completion arrives, it rarely demands emotion. It simply allows movement. As you listen to this, you may feel a quiet settling in your chest. A sense that you don't need to rehearse what you'll say or do when the moment comes. You'll know. Because you've already crossed the internal threshold that mattered most. The external moment is just catching up. And as that realization sinks in, as you let yourself trust that what's unresolved is no longer unstable, you may begin to feel something opening. Not urgency, not anticipation, space, the kind that invites new energy without forcing it. And as you breathe into that space, you don't need to rush forward. Just stay present. Because what unfolds from here will meet you where you already are. So, now Capricorn, this is the part where less becomes more. Where strength looks like restraint. Where wisdom looks like silence. You don't need to announce what you're doing next. You don't need to explain your reasoning. You don't need to walk anyone through your process just to feel understood. Some paths are meant to be walked quietly, not out of fear, out of respect for what you're building. You've learned that not everyone needs access to your plans, your thoughts, your next move. And that's not secrecy. That's self-protection. There's a difference. You're in a phase now where your energy matters more than your words, where keeping your peace is more valuable than winning a conversation. You've already done the hard part. You've already proven your resilience to yourself, so you don't need to convince anyone else. Let your actions speak when they're ready. Let results arrive without commentary, because the more grounded you become, the less explanation is required. You may notice a natural pulling away from old dynamics, old conversations, old emotional loops, not with anger, not with resentment, just with clarity. You know what drains you now, you know what feeds you, and you're choosing accordingly. You're withdrawing energy from places that no longer honor who you are becoming, and you're investing it where there is growth, mutual respect, and calm. That choice alone creates momentum. It allows life to rearrange itself without resistance. When you stop arguing with the past, the future has room to arrive. So keep moving forward without broadcasting every step. Keep building quietly. Keep listening to your inner timing. Not everything needs to be shared to be real. Not everything needs to be defended to be valid. And as you walk this way, you'll feel something settle inside you. A deep sense of rightness, not excitement, not adrenaline, alignment. The kind that doesn't ask for approval. The kind that feels steady in your chest. The kind that lets you sleep peacefully, even when everything isn't fully resolved. Because you know you've already passed what mattered most. You met yourself honestly. You stayed intact under pressure. You didn't lose your integrity when it would have been easy to do so. And that changes everything. From here on, you're not reacting to life. You're moving with it. With intention. With maturity. With quiet confidence. So, as you breathe into this moment, as you let this energy settle, trust that what's ahead will meet you at the level you now stand. No rush, no explanation, just forward motion rooted in peace. And that, Capricorn, is how new beginnings truly begin. Capricorn, before you go, let this settle for a moment, because what you just listened to was not meant to convince you of anything. It was meant to remind you of something you already know. You didn't survive this season by accident. You didn't grow calmer by chance. You didn't pass this test because you were lucky. You passed it because you trusted yourself when it mattered most. And if this message resonated, if you felt seen in a quiet way, type in the comments, "I trust myself now." Let other Capricorns see it. Let them know they're not walking alone. If you're still here, take that as a sign. This journey isn't finished yet. There is more unfolding, more clarity, more alignment. So, stay connected. Subscribe if this space feels right to you, because the next message is already forming, and whatever comes next, you won't meet it unprepared. You never were. Until next time, Capricorn, rest easy, stay grounded, and keep moving forward exactly as you are.